Picture this. You're sitting in a sterile, almost unnervingly quiet ramen restaurant in Tokyo. The air smells faintly of pork broth and disinfectant. Fluorescent lights hum overhead, reflecting off the polished surfaces. Across the narrow table isn't just your boss, not just a colleague, but one of the most influential and feared traders at Citibank, a global titan of finance. He leans forward slightly, the movement precise, controlled. A smile plays on his lips, but it doesn't reach his eyes. It's the kind of smile a predator gives just before the strike. And then he speaks, his voice low, calm, yet carrying an unmistakable weight of threat. Sometimes he says, pausing for effect, "Bad things happen to good people. We can make life very difficult for you, Gary." How did Gary Stevenson, a young man from East London, someone who had clawed his way up from nothing to become for a time Citibank's most profitable trader worldwide, find himself in this impossibly tense standoff halfway across the globe, potentially facing the wrath of a multi-billion-dollar institution? What game was really being played beneath the surface of high finance, and what seismic truth about the global economy had he uncovered that made him such a threat? Welcome to CEO's Library, the 1% bookshelf, where we distill the world's most impactful books into actionable insights for leaders, executives, and entrepreneurs. Today, we're diving deep into a raw, unflinching, and often shocking memoir, The Trading Game, a confession by Gary Stevenson. Forget sanitized business school case studies. This is a ground zero account from the engine room of global capitalism during one of its most turbulent periods, the 2008 financial crisis and its long, messy aftermath. It's a story that rips the lid off the gilded cage of investment banking, revealing a world driven less by complex algorithms and sophisticated models, and more by raw psychology, brutal gamesmanship, and deep-seated structural flaws. Gary's journey is anything but typical. This isn't a tale of privileged inheritance or Ivy League connections. It's the story of an outsider, a maths prodigy from Ilford, a place better known for tracksuits and street hustles than tailored suits and hedge funds. He navigated the shark-infested waters of Canary Wharf, London's financial heart, learning unspoken rules, surviving toxic personalities, and ultimately making millions by betting against the consensus, by seeing a reality others refuse to acknowledge. But this book is more than just a thrilling financial exposé. It's a profound exploration of class, ambition, the psychological toll of extreme pressure, and the often blurry line between playing the game and the game playing you. He learned a mantra on the trading floor: life is life, game is a game. But what does that truly mean when the stakes are billions of dollars and the fate of economies? Over the next half hour, we'll extract the 1% insights from Gary's incredible journey, from the childhood sting of losing a £1 coin to mastering the complex dance of derivatives trading, from facing down intimidating bosses to confronting the uncomfortable truths embedded within the financial system itself. We'll uncover actionable lessons on strategy, resilience, seeing the world with clear eyes, and understanding the real rules of competition. This is the story of how to win the game, and perhaps more importantly, how to recognize when it's time to stop playing. So let's start at the beginning. Just how does someone who felt more comfortable dodging trouble on the streets of East London than schmoozing at high society events even penetrate the hermetically sealed world of elite finance? How does a kid rocking tracksuits and possessing a sharp, almost uncomfortable directness navigate the hallowed halls of the London School of Economics, a breeding ground for the global elite, filled with the offspring of oligarchs and political dynasties? Gary arrived at LSE, a prestigious institution he'd fought tooth and nail to get into based purely on academic merit, and immediately felt like an alien. He was surrounded by effortless polish, by casual references to ski chalets and summer homes, by conversations peppered with acronyms and financial jargon he didn't understand. The pressure wasn't just academic. It was social. Networking events felt like bizarre rituals. Everyone else seemed to be focused on padding their curriculum vitae, securing internships through family connections, and mastering the art of sounding knowledgeable even when they weren't. Gary didn't have those connections. He didn't have the vocabulary. He felt the immense weight of expectation, the unspoken judgment. He saw the path everyone else was taking, the meticulous crafting of a perfect candidate profile, and realized it wasn't a game he could win, or even wanted to play. Instead of trying to mimic the polished insiders, Gary instinctively looked for a different way in, an alternative battlefield where his unique skills might actually be an advantage. He found it in an unconventional recruitment tool used by Citibank, a literal online trading game. Now, his LSE peers, steeped in economic theory and complex mathematics, approached this simulation exactly as you might expect. They meticulously analyzed the fictional assets, built sophisticated pricing models, calculated expected values, and tried to apply the complex principles they were learning in their lectures. They treated it like an extension of their coursework, a test of their theoretical knowledge. Gary saw something different. He didn't see a financial simulation. He saw a game with rules, sure, but also with players, psychology, and opportunities for exploitation that went far beyond the numbers. He noticed the artificiality, the constraints, the way other players were behaving predictably, rigidly adhering to the correct financial strategies. He realized the game wasn't about finding the true value of the fictional assets. It was about predicting and manipulating what other players would do. He applied raw game theory, honed perhaps by years navigating the complex social dynamics of his upbringing. He looked for arbitrage opportunities, not in the assets themselves, but between the players. He saw players who were overly cautious, players who were blindly aggressive, players who were stuck in linear thinking. He bluffed, he used volume and seemingly irrational aggression to manipulate perceptions, to make others doubt their own calculations. He wasn't burdened by the right way to trade according to academic theory. As he put it, while the LSE pros were painstakingly working out their expected values, he was simply chucking points into the bag, focusing on accumulating points by exploiting the game's mechanics and his opponent's predictable behavior. His perceived disadvantage, his lack of formal financial indoctrination, became his decisive edge. He wasn't trying to be the best finance student, he was trying to win the game, and he did, decisively. It was this performance, this unconventional thinking, this demonstration of raw competitive instinct that caught Citibank's eye and earned him a coveted internship, bypassing the standard routes clogged with polished resumes. The actionable insight here for any leader, any strategist, is profound. What is the real trading game being played in your industry, in your company, in your negotiations? So often, we focus on the stated rules, the official metrics, the business school frameworks, but beneath the surface, there are almost always unwritten rules, hidden incentives, psychological dynamics at play. Gary's success came from identifying those hidden dynamics. Are your competitors locked into rigid thinking patterns based on industry dogma? Can you exploit that predictability? Are there asymmetric advantages you possess, unique skills, perspectives, or information that aren't being valued by the conventional rules of engagement? Gary's maths brain and intuitive grasp of game theory were his asymmetric weapons. Sometimes, the most powerful strategy involves refusing to play the game everyone else is playing and finding, or even creating, a different playing field where your unique strengths can dominate. It's about looking beyond the spreadsheet and understanding the human element, the psychology, the bluff, the counterbluff. Where can unconventional thinking give you an edge? Where is the real leverage point, hidden in plain sight? Winning the game got Gary through the door, but surviving the internship and landing a full-time job was an entirely different beast. Imagine this: you're barely 20 years old, fresh from university, thrust onto a chaotic, testosterone-fueled trading floor at one of the world's biggest banks. Phones are ringing constantly, screens flicker with incomprehensible numbers, traders are shouting jargon, fortunes are being made and lost in seconds. It's an overwhelming sensory assault, and then your assigned boss, a gruff, intimidating figure, gives you your first task: nothing, literally, the nothing. No desk, no computer login, no specific project, just benign neglect. You're left adrift in a sea of hyper-competitive, alpha personalities. There's the intense, almost vibrating energy of Rupert, demanding and sharp. There's the loud, boisterous JB, cracking jokes but always watching. There's the enigmatic, older Bill, seemingly detached but possessing a deep, street-smart wisdom. And then there's Caleb, the smooth, polished and ultimately powerful figure who seems to glide effortlessly through this chaos. How do you navigate this jungle? How do you learn the ropes when no one seems willing to teach you? How do you prove your worth when you haven't even been given a chance? Gary quickly realized that survival, initially, wasn't about demonstrating his mathematical genius or trading prowess. Nobody cared about his LSE grades or his victory in the online game anymore. Survival was about observation, social intelligence, and proving fundamental reliability. He became a sponge, watching everything, listening intently. He started mapping the social landscape. Who had influence? What were their motivations? What were their quirks? He learned that Rupert, despite his intensity, responded well to sincere apologies. He recognized JB's use of humor as both a shield and a tool, and found common ground there. He identified Bill as a potential source of unfiltered wisdom, someone who operated slightly outside the main hierarchy. He noticed Caleb's quiet authority and the deference he commanded. He made himself useful in small, seemingly insignificant ways. He mastered the complex lunch orders for the desk, a logistical nightmare involving dozens of individual preferences and dietary restrictions. This wasn't just about getting food, it was about demonstrating attention to detail, reliability under pressure, and an ability to handle complexity without complaint. He learned to anticipate needs, having the right printouts ready, fetching coffees exactly as people liked them. He even navigated the subtle tests embedded in these tasks, like being given money for lunch and meticulously returning the correct change, understanding that this wasn't just about honesty, it was a signal of trustworthiness and precision, crucial traits in a world where rounding errors could cost millions. He built trust not through grand gestures, but through consistent competence in the mundane. And then there was the crucial piece of advice, delivered unceremoniously by the grizzled veteran Bill. 3 simple words that became a guiding principle in the cutthroat environment: cover your ass. It wasn't necessarily about being dishonest or avoiding responsibility, but about understanding the political landscape, documenting decisions, being aware of potential pitfalls, and protecting yourself from blame in a culture where scapegoats were readily sought when things went wrong. It was about self-preservation, a necessary skill when navigating complex hierarchies and high-stakes situations where careers could evaporate overnight. The lesson for leaders is clear. In any high-pressure, competitive environment, technical brilliance alone is rarely sufficient. You need sophisticated social intelligence. You need to be a master observer, capable of reading the room, understanding the hidden currents of power and influence, and deciphering individual motivations and incentives. How observant are you of the subtle dynamics within your own teams and organizations? How strategically do you build relationships, understanding that different people require different approaches? Gary benefited enormously from having diverse mentors. Bill's grounded, street-smart cynicism provided a vital counterpoint to Caleb's sophisticated corporate polish. Value those different perspectives. Furthermore, never underestimate the power of demonstrating competence and reliability, even in seemingly small tasks. Trust is built brick by brick through consistent execution. And finally, consider the concept of cover your ass. What does it mean ethically and practically in your context? It's not about shirking accountability, but about foresight, clear communication, managing risk, and ensuring that you and your team are protected when navigating complex, potentially volatile situations. It's about playing the long game, understanding that survival often precedes success. Gary survived the internship, secured the full-time role, and began his ascent. He found his niche on the swaps and interest rate trading desk, known as STIRT, learning the intricate dance of derivatives. Then, 2008 happened. The global financial system began to shudder. Bear Stearns collapsed. Then Lehman Brothers vaporized, sending shockwaves across the world. Credit markets froze. Banks teetered on the brink of insolvency. Headlines screamed of economic Armageddon. Friends and former colleagues were losing their jobs, their savings, their homes. Panic was palpable in the streets, in the news, everywhere, except, seemingly, on certain trading desks. While the world burned, paradoxically, traders like Gary and his mentor Bill, who specialized in short-term interest rates, were having the best days of their careers. They were making millions, sometimes tens of millions of dollars, daily. How? By understanding and exploiting the unprecedented dislocations in the market. One key trade involved simply lending US dollars. As panic seized the system, the basic plumbing of finance broke down. Banks stopped trusting each other, hoarding dollars. This created a massive demand for short-term dollar loans, sending interest rates skyrocketing for those willing and able to lend. Citibank, being a massive institution, still had access to dollars, and Gary's desk was perfectly positioned to lend them out at exorbitant rates, profiting immensely from the fear and dysfunction. Imagine the psychological dissonance, witnessing global economic collapse unfold on your screens, while simultaneously racking up record profits. Gary describes the surreal feeling, the strange detachment required to capitalize on chaos that was causing widespread misery. But the high-stakes game had sharp teeth. Hubris and chasing quick profits could lead to disaster. Gary learned this brutally, following a tip from another trader known as the Frog, a supposedly surefire bet involving the Swiss National Bank, SNB. Gary placed a massive trade. It wasn't based on his own analysis, but on the confidence of someone else. The market moved violently against him. Within a week, he had lost a staggering $8 million. The Frog, it turned out, had likely used Gary's position to his own advantage. It was a visceral lesson in trust, risk management, and the dangers of following the herd, even when the herd wears expensive suits. This massive loss, however, became a catalyst for deeper thinking. The psychological blow was immense, but it forced Gary to question everything. Shaken, he sought advice from Bill. Bill's response wasn't a complex financial strategy. It was beautifully simple, profoundly grounding. Go home, and ask your mum what she thinks is going on. Bill wasn't being literal, of course. He was telling Gary to disconnect from the theoretical models, the trading floor echo chamber, the endless stream of expert commentary, and connect with reality, to think about how the crisis and the subsequent government responses, like quantitative easing, were affecting ordinary people, people like his own family back in East London. And so Gary did. He stepped back from the minute-by-minute market fluctuations and started thinking about the bigger picture, drawing on his own lived experience. He looked at the world, not through the lens of economic textbooks, but through the eyes of someone who understood what it meant to struggle, to see opportunities shrink, to feel left behind. He observed the soaring asset prices, fueled by QE, enriching the already wealthy who owned stocks and property. But he also saw stagnant wages, rising costs of living, and precarious employment crippling the spending power of the vast majority, the middle and working classes. This led him to his groundbreaking insight, the contrarian view that would ultimately make him Citibank's most profitable trader and also set him on a collision course with the bank, while the consensus view among economists and market experts was that the massive stimulus would inevitably lead to inflation and rising interest rates as economies recovered. Gary saw something different. He saw deepening inequality as the dominant overriding force. He reasoned that the stimulus wasn't flowing into the real economy to boost demand because ordinary people simply didn't have the money or the confidence to spend. The rich were getting richer, saving their windfall, while the rest was struggling to tread water. This structural imbalance, he believed, would permanently suppress demand and keep interest rates anchored near zero for far longer than anyone predicted. It wasn't a temporary shock, it was a fundamental shift. This wasn't a prediction based on complex models, it was based on asking his mum, on observing the lived reality obscured by aggregate statistics. He placed massive bets based on this view, essentially betting against the widely expected economic recovery, and won spectacularly. But this success came with growing disillusionment. He saw the system rewarding bets based on its own dysfunction. He saw the disconnect between the abstract world of finance and the tangible struggles of ordinary people grow ever wider. His confrontation with Caleb in the Tokyo ramen shop wasn't just about a bonus, it was about this fundamental disagreement over the nature of the economy, a truth Gary felt the bank and the wider financial world was willfully ignoring, because acknowledging it threatened the entire edifice. The application for leaders is multifaceted. First, how heavily are you relying on theoretical models, industry consensus, or expert forecasts? Where can you get ground truth insights, the equivalent of asking your mum? Challenge prevailing narratives, especially when they don't align with observable reality. Second, understanding deep structural trends, like rising inequality, isn't just an ethical concern, it's fundamental to long-term strategic planning. Ignoring these realities can lead to flawed assumptions and costly mistakes. Third, how do you handle the cognitive dissonance that can arise when your organization's success seems disconnected from, or even contributes to, broader societal problems? This requires deep reflection and ethical leadership. And finally, recognize your own potential thermostat moments. Inspired by Bill, who eventually walked away, Gary reached a point where the internal contradictions, the ethical compromises, the sheer toxicity of the system became unbearable. What are your non-negotiables? When does the game stop being just a game and start demanding a fundamental choice about who you are and what you stand for? Knowing when and how to walk away can be the most powerful move of all. So, Gary Stevenson's journey through the trading game offers a potent, often uncomfortable, look inside the machine. It shows us that high finance isn't just about spreadsheets and algorithms, it's a brutal, high-stakes psychological game. He cracked the code as an outsider, leveraging his unique background and intuitive understanding of game theory. He survived and thrived in a cutthroat culture, not just through intellect, but through keen observation, social intelligence, and strategic self-preservation, learning to cover his arse. He made millions by daring to see a fundamental truth about economic inequality that the experts, blinded by their models and privilege, had missed. But the game exacts a toll. The constant pressure, the ethical compromises, the sheer disconnect from reality ultimately forced a confrontation, not just with his bosses, but with the very system that had made him phenomenally wealthy. Remember that trading floor mantra, life is life, game is a game. What did Gary ultimately learn it meant? Perhaps he discovered that the lines inevitably blur, that the game has profound real-world consequences, and that sometimes the only winning move is to refuse to play by rules you can no longer stomach. As leaders, as strategists, as navigators of complex environments, ask yourself, what's the real game being played in your field? Are you operating based on the written rules, or have you deciphered the unwritten ones? Are you leveraging your unique advantages, or trying to fit into a mold? And most importantly, echoing Bill's vital advice, are you connecting your strategies, your decisions, your work back to the real world, or are you getting lost in the abstraction? Go home and ask your mum. Go look at the world with your own eyes. That's where the deepest insights often lie. For the full transcript of this episode and accompanying visualizations to help illustrate some of these concepts, visit ceoslibrary.com. Listeners, if you want to dive deeper into Gary Stevenson's incredible story and the intense world he describes, you can buy a copy of The Trading Game, A Confession. Check the episode description for the Amazon link to purchase the full book or audiobook.